Story 1. The Surfer. I'd been working search and rescue along the Oregon coast for 11 years when we got the call about the missing surfer. 23-year-old kid from Portland, last seen paddling out near Hixita Head 3 days prior. His friends thought he'd just gone home early. They didn't report it until his car was still in the parking lot 2 days later. We found him on day 4. I've pulled bodies from the Pacific before. Drowning victims mostly. Sometimes fishermen who went overboard. The ocean doesn't care who you are. But I wasn't prepared for what we hauled onto the boat that morning. The wetsuit was intact. That's what struck me first. Full body neoprene. Dark blue with yellow panels along the sides. Not a tear in it. The zipper was still pulled up tight to the collar. But when we lifted him onto the deck, the suit moved wrong. It crumpled and folded in ways it shouldn't have. My partner, Derek, he turned away first. Started dry heaving over the rail. I made myself look. Where the hands should have been, the wetsuit sleeves ended in ragged cuffs, still sealed at the wrists. Inside, nothing. Where the feet should have filled out the booties, there was only the rubber shell. The hood framed a skull. Eye sockets picked clean, jaw hanging at an unnatural angle. Through the wetsuit's neck opening, I could see the white gleam of vertebrae, but the torso was full. Heavy. The suit bulged with the shape of ribs and organs that the crabs hadn't been able to reach through the neoprene. Just the extremities. Just everywhere the water could seep in, where the suit's seals had failed or where flesh was exposed. I've seen what crabs do to bait. I've seen what they do to fish carcasses left on the dock. But I'd never thought about what they do to a person, given time, given access. The wetsuit had protected most of him, turned him into a sealed container. But at the wrists, the ankles, the neck, where water and scavengers could creep in, that's where they'd fed. The medical examiner later told us he'd probably drowned quickly, got caught in a riptide, pulled under, couldn't fight his way back up. The currents had taken him out deep, then brought him back in over days. The whole time, he was sinking and rising with the tides, and every time he settled on the bottom, they came. Hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. Dungeness crabs, rock crabs, all the opportunistic feeders that scuttle along the ocean floor. They'd crawled inside his wetsuit through the neck, worked their way down the sleeves, stripped every piece of flesh they could reach, left nothing but bone and gristle. His radius and ulna were polished white, like something from a medical school skeleton. The skull grinned up at us from inside the hood, and I could see the tooth marks. No, not tooth marks. The scratches from tiny claws, scraping away the last bits of tissue. We found one still inside the suit when we unzipped it back at the dock. A big Dungeness, nearly 8 inches across. It scuttled out across the concrete, and I watched Derek crush it under his boot, ground it into the pavement until it was just shell fragments and pale meat. I go crabbing sometimes still, used to love it, but I can't eat them anymore. Can't stop thinking about what they eat, what they're designed to eat, anything that stops moving, anything that sinks down to where they wait. The kid's parents wanted to know if he suffered. I lied and said no, said it was quick. I didn't tell them that their son had become a feeding station, that the ocean had turned him into a buffet for bottom feeders. I didn't tell them that we found him with his arms eaten away to nothing, that crabs had crawled inside his wetsuit like it was a cave and feasted for days. I still dive, still do the job. But now, every time I'm in the water, and I see a crab scuttling across the rocks, I think about those empty sleeves, those hollow legs, that skull staring up from inside the hood. The ocean doesn't care who you are, and the things that live in it, they don't care either. They're just waiting for you to stop moving. Story 2. The Cave. I was part of the recovery team. That's something I have to live with now. The call came in on a Tuesday. Recreational diver missing in the Crystal Cave system, about 40 miles outside Tallahassee. Local rescue had located the body, but couldn't retrieve it. Too deep, too technical. They needed certified cave divers. They needed people stupid enough to go down there. I'd been cave diving for 8 years, done recoveries before. It's grim work, but someone has to do it, and the families deserve closure. My partner Jim and I geared up and got the briefing. Male victim, mid-30s, experienced diver. He'd been exploring a restriction at 190 feet when he got stuck. His buddy made it out, raised the alarm. By the time anyone got back down there, he'd been underwater for 6 hours. What they didn't tell us until we were suiting up was how they found him. The restriction was a narrow passage, barely wide enough for a single diver with tanks. The victim had made it through the head first, but couldn't turn around. Got wedged in somehow. Gear caught on a rock formation, most likely. Panicked. Used up his air trying to force his way forward or back. Then, when he knew he was finished, when he understood he was going to drown in a limestone coffin 190 feet below the surface, he took his dive knife and stabbed himself in the heart. The body found him like that. Knife handle still protruding from his chest, buried between the ribs. Blood in the water, though most of it had dispersed by then. The medical examiner theorized he chose a quicker death than drowning. Few seconds of pain versus minutes of suffocating terror. I understand the choice. I do. But understanding doesn't make it easier to see. Jim and I descended through the main cavern, following the guideline deeper into the system. Our lights cut through the murky water, illuminating limestone formations that looked like teeth. At 190, we found the restriction. He was still there, still wedged in the passage. The knife was gone. The first recovery team had removed it, but I could see the slit in his wetsuit, dark and ragged. His face was pale behind the mask, eyes open, mouth slack. His regulator had fallen from his lips. One arm was extended forward into the restriction, like he'd been reaching for something. Freedom, maybe, or just more cave. It took us 2 hours to free him. We had to carefully wiggle him backward, inch by inch, trying not to damage the body more than necessary. The whole time, I kept thinking about his last moments, the realization that he wasn't getting out, the decision he made, the feeling of the blade sliding between his ribs, finding his heart. Did it hurt as much as he thought? Was it faster? Did he regret it in that last second? We got him out, got him to the surface. His family was waiting. I didn't tell them about the knife wound. The coroner would handle that. I just said he'd gotten stuck and drowned. It's what they needed to hear. Jim and I were back at the station cleaning our gear when we got the second call. Jim had complained of chest pain on the ride back. Thought it was just stress, exertion from the dive. But it got worse. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was grey, sweating, couldn't breathe. Massive coronary, they said. His heart just gave out. He died the next day in the ICU. Never regained consciousness. I've thought about it a lot over the years. The timing, the location, his heart. same as the victim. The doctor said it was stress, coincidence, but I was there. I saw Jim's face when we were pulling that body back through the restriction. I saw the way he looked at that wound, the way his hand went to his own chest, just for a second, like he could feel it. I don't dive caves anymore. Can't do it. Every time I think about going down, I see that diver's face, pale and empty behind his mask. I see the hole in his wetsuit. I see Jim in that hospital bed, machines breathing for him, his heart refusing to beat. 2 men went into that cave system and didn't come out. One of them is buried. The other one is me. I just haven't stopped walking around yet. Story 3. The Eye. The wreck sits at 130 feet off the Florida Keys. Old cargo ship, went down in a hurricane in 1975. It's a popular dive site now, covered in coral and home to all kinds of fish. I'd done the dive a dozen times, never had a problem. This time was different. Visibility was terrible that day, maybe 15 feet, and that's being generous. The current had kicked up sediment, and the water had that greenish murk that makes everything feel close and claustrophobic. My buddy and I descended anyway. We were both experienced, both comfortable in low-vis conditions. You just stay close, keep your light on, follow the wreck's contours. I was exploring the portside hull, running my hand along the corroded metal, when I saw the porthole. It was intact somehow, glass still in the frame, covered in algae and encrustations. Something made me stop, made me lean in close and shine my light through. That's when I saw it. An eye. Massive. Easily the size of a dinner plate, maybe bigger. It was pressed right up against the glass on the other side, filling the entire porthole. The pupil was huge and dark, surrounded by a pale iris that seemed to glow in my light. And it was looking at me. Not just in my direction, at me. Focused, aware. Then it blinked. I've never moved so fast underwater. Training says don't panic, don't bolt for the surface, but every nerve in my body was screaming to get away from that porthole. I kicked backward, slamming into my buddy, who grabbed my arm. I could see the confusion in his eyes behind his mask. I pointed at the porthole, but when he shined his light at it, there was nothing there. Just algae-covered glass and the dark interior of the wreck. He gestured. What? I gestured back. Go up. Now. We ascended slowly, had to for safety, but felt like an eternity. The whole way up, I kept looking down, expecting to see something rising beneath us, something big enough to have an eye that size. On the boat, I tried to explain. My buddy thought I'd had nitrogen narcosis, but we'd only been at 130. Not deep enough for narc to hit that hard. The captain asked what kind of eye. What did it look like? I couldn't answer. Couldn't describe it beyond the size and the fact that it had blinked. It was just an eye. But the intelligence behind it, that's what got me. That sense of being seen, being observed by something that understood what I was. Later I did research. Goliath grouper can get massive. 800 pounds, 8 feet long. Their eyes are proportionally large, and they're curious fish, known to approach divers to watch them. The wreck would be a perfect home for one. Dark, plenty of space, lots of smaller fish to feed on. It made sense. It was rational. A big grouper, startled by my light, had looked out through the porthole at the same moment I looked in. Our eyes met. It blinked. I panicked. But here's what keeps me up at night. Goliath grouper don't have eyes the size of dinner plates. Even the biggest ones, their eyes are large, but not that large. And the way it looked at me, grouper are curious, sure. But this was different. This felt deliberate, calculating. I went back to the wreck 3 months later. Daytime dive. Perfect visibility. I found the porthole. Took photos. Looked inside. The cabin was empty. No grouper. No fish at all really. Just rotted furniture and debris. And the porthole itself was small. Maybe 12 inches across. Not nearly big enough to frame an eye the size I'd seen. I still dive. Still love it. But I don't do wrecks in low visibility anymore. And when I'm down there, swimming along a hull or peering into dark spaces, I sometimes get this feeling. This sense that something is looking back. Something that's too big for the space it occupies. Something that blinks. Story 4. The reef. It happened in Belize, on a reef about 8 miles off the coast. I was doing a solo dive. Stupid, I know, but I was certified, experienced, and it was a sight I'd done before. Shallow dive, 40 feet, plenty of light, just a nice, easy reef exploration. I'd been down about 20 minutes when I noticed the eye. I was circling a coral formation, this big mushroom-shaped structure covered in sea fans and sponges, when I saw it. An eye, staring up at me from the sand at the base of the reef. Just an eye, enormous and unblinking, partially buried in the sediment. My first thought was, octopus. They bury themselves, leave just their eyes exposed. But this was too big. The visible part of the eye alone was the size of a softball, and the shape was wrong. Not the horizontal pupil of an octopus, but round, dark, human-like almost, except for the scale. I circled around to get a better look, keeping my distance. The sand around the eye was smooth, undisturbed. Whatever it belonged to was completely buried except for that one eye, watching me, tracking my movement as I swam. I should have surfaced then, should have ended the dive. But curiosity kept me there, circling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The reef was alive with fish, tangs, parrotfish, a small moray poking its head from a crevice. Everything was normal, everything except the eye. I completed another circle, wider this time, and that's when I felt it. Not something I saw or heard, but something I felt. A presence, a wrongness, the kind of instinctive terror that lives in the oldest part of your brain, the part that remembers when humans were prey. The fish were gone. I realized it suddenly. The reef was empty. The moray had retreated into its hole. The tangs had scattered. Even the small cleaning shrimp that usually covered the coral had vanished. It was just me and the eye. And the eye was tracking me. As I moved, it moved. Not the whole eye, just the pupil, adjusting, following. Like it was calculating, waiting. I don't remember deciding to leave. My body just moved, finning hard for the surface, not caring about a slow ascent, not caring about anything except getting away from that reef, from that eye, from whatever was buried beneath the sand, watching me with an intelligence that had no business in those waters. I broke the surface and swam for the boat like something was chasing me. The captain helped me aboard, asked if I was okay. I told him I'd seen a shark, just wanted to cut the dive short. I didn't tell him about the eye. Didn't know how to explain the terror that had seized me. That night, I searched for any marine animal that matched what I'd seen. Came up empty. Large fish have large eyes, sure, but not like that. Not partially buried. Not tracking movement with that kind of focus. Rays bury themselves, but their eyes are small, positioned on top of their heads. Octopi, cuttlefish, squid, none of them fit. I left Belize the next day. Didn't finish the dive trip I'd paid for. Just packed up and flew home. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed longer. If I'd reached down and brushed away the sand to see what the eye belonged to. If it would have moved, struck, pulled me down into the sediment with it. But mostly I'm grateful for that instinct. That unspoken terror that told me to run. Because whatever was under that sand, whatever was watching me with that enormous intelligent eye, it wasn't anything I've ever seen in a marine biology textbook. And I never want to see it again. Story 5. The submarine. I was doing a deep dive off San Diego, about 200 feet down on a wall that dropped into the abyss. Technical dive, mixed gas, just me and my buddy exploring the edge of the shelf. The visibility was incredible, maybe 100 feet in every direction. Crystal clear, you could see forever. We were about 40 minutes into the dive when I felt it. Not heard it, not saw it, felt it. The water changed. That's the best way I can describe it. The pressure, the temperature, the way the current moved. Something shifted, like the ocean itself was making room for something massive. I looked down. The submarine passed beneath us at maybe 50 feet below our position. It was grey, enormous, moving in complete silence. No engine noise, no vibration in the water. Just this massive metal shape gliding through the deep like a ghost. I've seen submarines on TV, in documentaries, but seeing one in person, from above, in the water, it's different. The sheer size is incomprehensible. This thing was longer than a football field, probably 3 stories tall, with a conning tower that rose up toward us like a building. And it was moving fast, faster than something that size should be able to move, cutting through the water without making a sound. My buddy grabbed my arm. I could see the shock in his eyes behind his mask. We both just floated there, frozen, watching this behemoth pass silently beneath us. No wake, no disturbance in the water, just smooth, eerie movement, like watching a whale. Except, whales make noise. Whales create turbulence. This was silent. Perfectly, unnaturally silent. It took maybe 30 seconds to pass. 30 seconds of watching this massive war machine glide through the ocean depths, completely undetectable except for the fact that we happened to be right above it with perfect visibility. Then it was gone, swallowed by the deeper blue beyond the wall. We surfaced, slowly, carefully, observing our decompression stops, even though every instinct screamed to get out of the water. On the boat, we compared notes. We'd both seen the same thing. Both felt that weird pressure change. Both watched it pass in silence. The captain reported it when we got back to harbour. Navy confirmed they had a sub in the area, but wouldn't say more than that. Classified operations. We were asked not to discuss it. But here's what haunts me. That submarine was hunting. It had to be. Moving that deliberately, that silently, at that depth. Practicing approaches, attack runs, evasion techniques, war games in the deep ocean, right beneath civilian divers who had no idea we were swimming above an active combat exercise. And if we hadn't been there, if we hadn't happened to look down at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right visibility, we never would have known. It would have passed beneath us, and we would have been completely unaware that several hundred tons of steel and nuclear weapons had just glided silently under our fins. That's what gets me. The silence, the invisibility, the fact that these things move through the ocean constantly and we have no idea. We're up there, paddling around on the surface or doing our recreational dives, thinking we're exploring the ocean, and all the while these massive machines are moving beneath us in complete silence, watching, waiting, practicing for wars we can't imagine. I still dive. But now, sometimes, when I'm deep and it's quiet and the visibility's good, I'll look down into the blue and wonder what's passing beneath me that I can't see, can't hear, can't feel. The submarine I saw was detectable only by accident, by coincidence. How many others have passed beneath me since then? How many times have I been floating above something massive and silent and utterly lethal, completely unaware? The ocean isn't empty. It just wants you to think it is.